Okay, good day, everyone. This is Chukwuma Odelogo again. I'm a lawyer and I do public policy analysis. I just don't do it because I'm a lawyer. I do it because I'm actually trained in it. Before I studied law, I went to School of Public Policy in the U.S. Louisiana State University, Southern University back in the 80s. So I know quite a few things about what I'm talking about. So listen up. What I want to talk about today. Please like and share this video. This is a new channel. I don't often have time, but when I do them, like and share them, maybe it'll grow. Maybe it will encourage me to do more. But the topic I want to handle today is the spiking rents across the country. Now, two things brought the issue to motivated me to actually discuss it. One was I saw on Google bill to regulate agency legal fees in Enugu scales first reading. I read it. The purpose of it is to control the spiking rates of rent, housing rent in Enugu State. Well, I put that aside. 24 hours later, I'm looking at one of the online platforms, and I saw on the cable, the cable wanted to discuss, the cable online news outlet wanted to discuss the same issue, spiking rent across the country. What's driving it? And I said, oh, and that's tomorrow, by the way. If you can tune in to the cable to hear what they have to say. Actually, they asked me to join in, but I don't think I will because I don't think I have time. But anyway, let's do this. There's something that the governments do in Nigeria. Let me just lay a little foundation. There's something the governments do in Nigeria. They often ignore problems. For years, a problem can be in Nigeria, be as obvious to everybody except the government for some reason. And then all of a sudden, when the government decides to recognize that the problem exists, they shoot in the wrong direction. Either they shoot at citizens, not literally, but they go after citizens. They want to regulate citizens, or they want to regulate something. That is, they avoid what they should do to solve the problem and do something else. I call it tinkering at the edges. So what's going on now is Enugu State wants, this is not an attack on Enugu State, but because I know that sooner or later all the other states will follow, because that often happens. Once one state does something, or one governor does something, other governors in Nigeria tend to all follow as if it's like something new. But anyway, when in one of the previous administrations, of course, if you grew up in Nigeria, sooner or later you went to school or you met one of these governors or one of these senators. We all know them. We all grew up. So I went to school with one, a former governor, and we remained friends. And while he was governor, I remember one day calling him because we used to talk. And I said, look, why don't you regulate these agents? My then problem was agents. I said, regulate them. They charge anything they want. In the US, these people charge 3%. Seller pays 3%, buyer pays 3%. In Nigeria, these people charge whatever they want. In Enugu State in particular, there are no percentages. They can ask you for anything. But that was that. Anyway, that governor declined, or at least he didn't do anything about it. Anyway, now Enugu State wants to purportedly regulate agencies. The agency is now pegged at 10, will be pegged at 10%, assuming that the bill passes, assuming the bill becomes law. Agents will receive 10%, lawyers will receive 10%. Put aside for a moment whether state law can regulate legal fees for lawyers knowing that the Legal Practitioners Act exists and that the National Assembly actually regulates lawyers. But that's an issue for a different issue. I think that they can. I've seen somewhere one lawyer commented that they cannot. I think that they can, particularly when it comes to housing in Enugu State. I believe that the State Assembly can do that. But anyway, but that's by the way. What we have now is whether this will work. Of course, it will not work. No amount of regulating agency fees, agency rates, what lawyers charge, saying no caution. The agents, human beings will find ways to get around these fees and still charge them. The landlord could easily charge these fees and still be behind the table, pay the agents. Because the landlord knows without these agents, you're not going to get the tenants, not that quickly, and your property remains empty. And the tenants are desperate. The problem with housing in Nigeria is no supply. It goes back to demand and supply. No supply. Little supply. Now, if you go to advanced countries, you find that it's the governments that take the responsibility of supplying housing at the lower end of the economic strata. The government supply the housing. Why? Because people at that level have little to no ability to pay rents, particularly commercial rents. At commercial rates, at willing buyer, willing seller, poor people cannot bargain. That's why poor people tend to live in any way they can. Now, the fact is, governments in Nigeria do not care for the poor. That's one. Governments in Nigeria do not care for the middle class. That's number two. Governments in Nigeria do not care for even the upper middle class. They only care about the political class. Now, without the supply of housing at the bottom end, everybody is in the housing marketplace looking for housing. And without the government, remember, who has more money than the government? Very few people. So the entity with the largest amount of money, the entity that can take your money by force, the entity that has resources, does not participate in the housing market. How are you going to have housing? You're not going to have housing. That's one. Two, the second problem with housing in Nigeria that goes against the supply is if private investors are not participating as much as they used to. Why? Because of the cost of building materials. You know what cement costs now. Rod, go and price 16 mm, assuming you get a full complete 16 mm. These days they sell anything for 16 mm. But cement, you know how much cement costs. Cement went as high as 12,000, 13,000, 15,000 naira per bag. Who can afford to buy these things in a number of bags needed in order to build homes? And then after they build those homes, they will not be able to supply even a fraction. They won't be able to build as much. And even if they build as much, they won't be able to supply nearly what the population needs. And the population continues to grow. So no amount of talk can solve the problem of housing in Nigeria unless the governments get in the market.